You are live.
Great. So this is the Senate Transportation Committee. We are back live on February 12th. We have DMV, the Commissioner and Deputy Commissioner here. And I think you're kicking it off, Deputy Commissioner.
Deputy Commissioner DMV Matt Russo. So we're going over the purchase and use tax and how it's calculated for several different scenarios.
Okay, that would be great because we've heard some people with issues.
First, I'll say that we do have an online calculation wizard, so people can go online, put in all their information if they have a trade, and it calculates everything for you in all of these scenarios. The first scenario is you're purchasing it from a dealer, and the tax is calculated on the purchase price from the dealer, out of state or Vermont dealer. Scenario 2 is you're purchasing it in a private sale, and there's two different tracks. You have a vehicle that's 19 years or newer or 20 years and older. If it's 19 years and newer, we're using the clean trade value from JD Power. If it's 20 years and older, we're using the low retail currently from JD Power. The low retail.
And how do you calculate that?
And so that's 6% we charge before.
Thanks for looking up in the book.
I understand that. That's partly what I'm at issue. We have lots of people with cars here that because we have snow, because we have salt, and people travel and they've got issues. So you buy a car, it has an issue. How do individuals reconcile?
They can use a dealer appraisal form, which is available online. Or you can visit a dealer, have them appraise the vehicle, and we will honor whatever their
And the dealer charges for that.
I actually don't know. I don't, if it matters dealer to dealer, I'm not positive.
Okay.
So we will honor that in tax that at the time if you have it when you're there to register. If not, we will do an after the fact refund when it's submitted.
Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you. Sorry, this is dumb, but I assume there's some sort of definition of a dealer. Do you have to have a license?
You have to be a licensed dealer.
And that's used cars and new cars.
We have new car dealers and used car dealers.
And any of those can certify.
Correct.
So I would think used car dealers would be a better one to go to in this situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And do you get those
We do.
You get this?
Quite frequently.
Oh, okay. So what's quite frequent? Just
I don't have numbers, but we see it often.
tens or? Okay.
I would say hundreds.
All right. That's good to know. All right, thank you.
Does, is a dealer, anyone with a, temporary plate, a dealer plate?
Not always. Not always.
Let me rephrase it. Can a, auto repair shop be a dealer?
Yes. Right. You can be a dealer in an inspection station.
Okay. So I think what some of us are trying to get at, I've heard from a few people who have, well, a good friend of mine is, he's a body shop guy. And he's a wheeler dealer. He'll see a car that's a total mess and, buy it for nothing. But he pays tax on the value of that car. Could have been in a wreck. How does he go about it? Same process? Can he do his own dealer evaluation sheet?
He could. When you're registering the vehicle, you're signing, stating an affidavit saying that your vehicle is already roadworthy and inspectable.
Yeah.
So the tax isn't due until the vehicle is ready to be inspected and roadworthy.
So after he's completed his
So it
work,
would be after you've done all the work.
but he would fill out a sheet based on what it was when he got it, not what it is when he's done with it, correct? If he's
He could have a dealer appraisal done after the fact as well.
I don't think he'd want to do that if he didn't want to pay tax on.
Because of the work that was done, it could be a lower value after the fact.
Okay,
All depends on
I'm not quite following.
I don't understand.
So if you're doing body works, let's say you have a salvage vehicle, your vehicle is always going to value lower than if it wasn't salvaged or if it didn't have body work done on it.
So when he
Car
buys this $5,000 car for 500 because it's been wrecked. He bought it for 500. He's putting his own time and money into fixing it. Is he paying tax on the 500 after he fills out that form?
After he fills out the form, it depends on what it's valued at. After the appraisal. If he wanted to go.
So
that
if
route.
I was him, I would appraise it while it's wrecked. Correct?
It would depend on the date that you're putting on the form. So are you appraising it while it's wrecked and not roadworthy, or are you appraising it after it's been rebuilt?
Well, if I was a good businessman, I'd appraise it while it was wrecked.
That's
That's
possible.
okay.
That's possible.
Okay.
We have no way of knowing.
When you buy it. When you replace it.
When you buy it and then you appraise it, if you're ready to register it and it's roadworthy.
Yeah, so that's the rub, is that if you buy a car that you can't register, that's where it gets tough.
Right, you're attesting that it's roadworthy and ready to be on the road and inspected at the time that you're registering.
So are people allowed to just transfer cars as a not roadworthy vehicle and pay each other, compensate each other for that transaction
You could, as
separately?
long as it's being towed and
All right, so then you don't have to
dealer to dealer sales.
pay. The question is, how do you pay tax when you buy something that is not?
You wouldn't pay tax on it until you're ready to register it. That's why it's purchase and use as opposed to the sales tax. So you're paying at the time of registration for purchase and use stuff.
So you could sell it multiple times
You could.
without paying tax. You
As long as
just
there's a
pay
chain of
the tax.
ownership.
All right. Okay,
So you're only paying tax once at the time of registration, not
okay.
in between sales.
So in that case, the dealer,
So,
I still
So-
don't know. We still don't have an answer to that question.
so you're an individual. You are on Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist. Or you have a friend that has a car for sale. You buy the car. The car has a check engine light on, which is quite common. You transfer ownership. You at DMV would come in and say, Blue Book value is this. And chances are the person bought the car for less because it has the check engine light on.
Right.
And the way the system works, the dealer is the only one that can get the parts for the check engine system. And my experience and listening to people in my community is that they charge a lot for all of the check engine light stuff. What does somebody, they have to go to a dealer? How many dealers are there that will do the appraisal that are out there?
I don't know how many do it. They're all dealers are certified to do a
I have one
appraisal.
new car dealership in my county. And I have no idea who might sell secondhand cars that might be licensed beside, but I have one in my county. And I know that they do charge to get the appraisal done on the car. And I don't know how much or what it is. And I'm just trying to understand this system because when I look at that, quite frequently, it's very expensive to get the check engine light taken care of. And so I'm not as worried about anybody with a more expensive vehicle. I'm very worried about the person that buys a $5,000 car and then gets charged a bunch more. And I don't think the process to get that assessment done, takes time and is difficult for, people that don't have a lot.
I can't disagree with that.
But
I said, I can't disagree with that it may be difficult for some Vermonters. I don't know what the solution is.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, and I don't have a lot of sympathy for people that have cars that are worth tens of thousands of dollars. It's those people that are struggling to try to get to work that are in the process. And I'm worried about those people getting caught. Go ahead.
Are you proposing legislation or a change?
Well, I'm trying to understand what the system exactly is that people have to go to. You know, I'd like to know how many people do appraisals, how accessible they are to people to do that. You know, I went online to find the form, and I know that you're probably better at looking all this up. I had trouble finding the form online, and I just look at somebody that's unsophisticated, that is struggling to get to work, and going, if they have to take their car in to get it inspected, and it costs them money, and they have to take time off from work to do it, I'm worried that they just throw up their arms and say, I'll just pay it.
Mr. Chairman, so the reason I'm asking, may I ask a few questions?
Sure.
How many people buy vehicles through a licensed dealer in Vermont? Like, what is the percentage of people who have all of this done for them by the dealer?
I would have to get those numbers.
Okay, do you think it's more than 50%? Probably more than, it's probably the majority of vehicle purchases in our state are not Facebook Marketplace or not a private sale in that way. It's through a dealer who does all of that process for you. That's the benefit and the privilege of someone becoming a dealer, is that's a business. So it's true. If you go to an external market, if you're getting a really good deal because you're doing it off the classified ads or off Facebook Marketplace, it's true. There will be additional steps. You can buy a car just as cheaply off Facebook Marketplace as a used car dealer. It's the difference of what kind of service you expect. So I understand your point. I just find it a little frustrating that we have a lot of systems in place so people can make big purchases like vehicles through responsible, respected business folks, and that there are situations where people go outside of that, and that person who's making that external separate purchase is taking on risk. Just like if I bought a house off of the classifieds without a real estate agent, or I had a friend who I traded a good or a service with. That's a different process. But the majority of Vermonters, especially low-income Vermonters, are using traditional business place services, which follow all the DMV processes. So I'd love to know, perhaps that's the question, is how many of these folks are making these purchases outside of the traditional dealer? And to Senator Brennan's point, you can be an auto body technician shop and get 4 dealer plates. It's not just the Hyundai dealers, it's the small folks too who are dealers. And what is the percentage of folks who are listing that they're getting it off the market, separate from a licensed dealer? Because I do think I understand that there are specific situations that you have experienced or heard from constituents, but I also think there is some risk and some ownership of that risk if you're going to be going online and buying something off Facebook. You know, that's a risk. Most people don't purchase their cars that way because it's a risk. So I guess I find that we're talking in a lot of abstracts without any kind of language or a bill to discuss on this. And it feels frankly like outside of our purview for this conversation of what the committee should spend time on. So I guess I'm just, yeah, that's
What
what.
percentage of people do they estimate now driving without their car registered?
Driving without a registration?
Yeah.
I would have to get those numbers.
I think those numbers are available.
I would have to go by, tickets issued for not having a registration.
I think there are estimates out there. Go ahead, Pat.
You know what it boils down to is the average citizen, and there are a lot of cars sold by, Richie's got a car for sale and he puts it out there because you're gonna get more money for a car normally selling it outright than you would trading it in for a new one. But I think the average citizen out there, when they buy a car and they're shopping, and there are some guys who do that for a living, they buy and sell, but they look for a deal. They'll see a car that needs a lot of work. They'll pay that $1,000 for that car that in the J.D. Powers book might be $4,000. They get a deal because it's got salt rust all over it, needs brakes, needs this, doesn't run. And they'll work on it and fix it up. And when they go to register, pay taxes, they come to me, they come to their legislator and they say, what's the deal? I paid $1,000 for this car and I'm paying tax on $4,000. And they don't understand it. Frankly, I don't either, but I don't know how you fix that because you'd have everybody doing it. I mean, the form might do it, but I'm still not sure how that works with the before and after.
Yeah, that would be a legislated thing.
Yeah, and I think we get a lot of people that sell stuff that have vehicles that are worth thousands of dollars. And clearly, I have to say, I'm not too worried about that. For me, I bought that rusty car because I can't afford anything else. And I'm trying to fix it up, or I'm trying to make a little bit of money in that. And I think, it's been a long time since I looked, but there are a lot of people driving cars that are uninspected and unregistered, in the state. And I think that speaks to the difficulty that some people have to try to go out around the system. Go ahead.
Sure. Andrew Collier, Commissioner DMV for the record. I would just point out, since COVID, I don't want to speak for law enforcement as a whole, but there's been a significant shift in how enforcement is happening on the road. I remember inspection stickers, registrations, just more vehicle stops in general were significantly higher pre-COVID. And since COVID, I think you can hear from constituents and the public that, there's a frustration with people driving and lack of enforcement out on the roadways. But I think part of that is just people realize there's a lack of enforcement as well. So if I'm not going to go get, if there's a higher likelihood that I am not going to get pulled over, why should I go get an inspection or update my registration? So I think it's a mixture of, I'll just add, I think it's a mixture of what you're speaking to, but I think there's also some other influencing factors pushing into that as well.
Where would where's the best place to try to get estimates around those numbers?
I think we could pull from tickets and warnings. I think that's a place to start, because otherwise if we don't have like a vehicle count that captures the vehicles driving and then captures if it matches to registration. So I think that's at least give a slight baseline. I would say it's just in the current state of enforcement right now that it might not be super accurate. But I think that's a place we can start, is pulling from current tickets and warnings.
And do we have estimates of people driving without licenses now?
I haven't seen an estimate. Again, we can pull what we have for data on the what's been issued for tickets or even, I guess, positive warning. Sometimes we can issue that as well.
It would be helpful, and it's just the interesting stuff to have, and how and any suggestion on where we might look.
Yep.
Just add one other thing.
Go ahead.
There's a safety component to this.
Yes, there is.
It's not
absolutely.
just the cost, but there's a safety component. So I think that's should be part of our conversation.
Yeah, I think, there definitely is a safety component.
Yeah,
And
we're having more crashes, so
mhm,
it's not good.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if you're interested, I think we're kind of conflating three different components, if not four, of this conversation, which is the inspection, the registration, the cost for purchase and use, and then the drivability and safety of that vehicle. Those four things they can all have different policy solutions, depending on how we wanted to do it. So if we wanted as a committee to identify a specific area that we wanted to work on, I would be happy to have that conversation. I think what I'm struggling with is understanding the connections being made between people getting their vehicle inspected or not inspected and getting registered or not registered, and then not wanting to pay the tax on the full value. Those are very independent universes in my mind. And it feels like we're kind of talking about it all as one big ball of yarn. So if you're trying to pull out, how do we support low-income Vermonters who have vehicles that are old, damaged, or that they've done work on that they can't get inspected, that's a very different conversation. And I think if we want to have that conversation, we could spend a significant amount of time. We're one of only 16 states now that continue the inspection process in the way that we do. Many states have in recent years actually done away with the inspection.
well, and there.
So if we wanted to identify that as an area, I think we could certainly spend time. There was a great piece that Vermont Public presented recently where they featured the Girlington Garage and talking about how people choose when to get an inspection and if they are driving uninspected, and does it actually increase the safety of the vehicle and the safety for the drivers. So there are a lot of angles to this, but it just feels kind of silly to spend a lot of time worrying about this without having real language in front of us. So I guess that's kind of where I'm at. If maybe there's a bill coming and I don't know, but.
Well, there is bills in the House coming on eliminating vehicle inspection.
Oh, there is. Oh, okay.
There's bills on the other side, and
I did see
I've
that.
been told that the Senate, the House Transportation Committee is probably going to take testimony on it.
Oh.
So, and so I think there is a whole ball of all of that I think it's hard for in a place. One of the things I hear most in rural communities is the lack of transportation and the difficulty for people that are particularly low income to be able to address their transportation needs. And getting in a safe car is difficult. And and I would absolutely agree. I don't think it's just the purchase and use tax. I think it is the inspection. It is the inspection light on the dash. And I find it interesting that the manufacturers and the dealers have cornered any of those products. So your local guy that's in your community that works on the car can do everything but can't get that done
What do you mean?
Without one.
What do you mean?
without money. Yeah. So I have 4 or 5 small mechanics in my community. They aren't allowed to buy the parts for the check engine light stuff.
Huh.
And so you end up to buy any new parts that have to come from the manufacturer to the new car dealer.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Can I ask you one follow-up question on that?
Sure.
I think it's not an inspection light, it's a check engine light. is what you're referring to.
What's a
that-
check engine?
Okay, just,
But you
there's
can't
no.
But you
level thing.
can't get it inspected with the check engine.
And if there's a specific situation that someone is experiencing with a check engine light, they should go to an auto body mechanic or their dealership and get that resolved. I don't think that's on
They can
the,
only go to a dealership.
so you're saying that they are I mean, I think that that's kind of separate from,
No, I think the
like,
whole
that's not, we're not,
package-
DMV
whole-
isn't gonna resolve that.
No, I think, but I think these are a whole package of issues that affect particularly lower income Vermonters that are struggling.
And we do have Mileage Smart and Replace Your Ride, which are our two most impactful programs in my mind that help Vermonters with older, not functioning vehicles or high mileage vehicles to get them into high efficiency, lower cost cars. And electric vehicles have oftentimes much lower maintenance requirements than gas powered vehicles. So if we want Vermonters to spend less on maintenance and to have access to better transportation, helping them transition to EVs by funding Mileage Smart and Replace Your Ride would be where I think we as a committee could direct a lot of our attention.
It was my motion in this committee to create the first $1.5 million that went into mileage.
There we go. We should work on that.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
But
We can get those stats.
if you could get some of those stats,
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
thanks. Commissioner? Oh, yeah, they were.
Yes.
Morning.
Dave?
Andrew Collier, Commissioner DMV for the record. And here to talk about S46. So from DMV's perspective, we would potentially support the language coming through in this bill. We just have concerns on the funding, on the amount. We haven't seen any numbers on the revenue effect on this bill. Additionally, we have concerns on the specific definition of what a forestry vehicle is. Because I know it, in the terms that are in there right now, I think it can include a pickup truck, service vehicles. And I think that creates a slippery slope on, in my Andrew Collier getting firewood for my house. So now I don't have to spend money on the purchase and use of buying a truck.
I think where I read the language like that, it had to be purchased by a business. So you could create Andrew Collier LLC firewood company and then buy the truck from the business.
Correct.
I think that's the way I read it, but I agree overall.
I feel like it creates a slippery slope, is just how we're initially reading that. And then the other concern we have is just, I noticed the bill said, implemented upon passage, which I think there's some time to develop with Department of Taxes on what the actual guidance is, which is stated in the bill. On what you're defining as a forestry vehicle and how we're capturing that information to make sure everything aligns.
So I think the Joint Fiscal Office is going to struggle with what the estimates are for cost. And if this bill moves, we're going to be asked about what the costs are. I would think on the sales tax part, you probably aren't, you weren't the place to go. But on the purchase and use tax piece, I think joint fiscal is going to count on the DMV to help come up with some cost estimates to do that.
Yes, and they've reached out. I know the team's working with trying to identify what we have for vehicles that we can identify as currently forestry vehicles.
And I think it comes back to this big question on, are we including, 3/4 ton pickup trucks, 1 ton pickup trucks, because that's a big
Well,
segment.
I would also say to you that if there was some more artful way to come up with definitions, DMV had suggestions, we would welcome those suggestions to talk about this.
Yeah, and we'll work internally to take a good look at that. And
Because I would tell you, I'm for a regular pickup that's mostly traveling the roads, I'm not as sympathetic. But when it comes to the truck that is hauling the logs, and there has been some question in here, how is forestry products truckers being treated, say, compared to what happens in agriculture? And, a lot of what happens in agriculture, I'll take, for example, diesel fuel. We have, we have different colored diesel fuels, and if you're just running a tractor on your fields, you don't pay, but if you're on the road, I think of a truck, just suggest personally, I think of a truck that is hauling the logs a lot like a milk truck. How do we treat those and how differently, and how do I make any comparison?
no, absolutely. And I think just anecdotally, I don't think, the cap at 2,400 and I think it was $68 on the purchase and use. I don't think Vermont's has a lot of, if we're talking the large equipment on the roads and the trailers, I don't think that's potentially going to be a huge hit. I think it's just when you get down to the granular level of, okay, are we including every type of vehicle now, like a 1-ton pickup truck or a 3/4 ton? I think that's where that parity, I think, is a little hard to.
If we decide to move this bill, it's going to go to finance and they're going to ask. 2/3 of the purchases we care about specifically because it goes to the T fund. But the 1/3 will go, for right now, goes to education.
Yep.
And on the sales tax side, that all goes to the ed fund. And we can move the bill, but I doubt very much that a finance committee is going to move a bill without clearer estimates. And we're going to need some help to figure those out.
Yeah, and the team's been working with joint fiscal, and I'm trying to, again, it's not an area that we capture specifically for forestry, so we're trying to
Yep.
suss out what those numbers actually look like.
Yeah.
But we're working on it, and we're working with JFO on this.
Yeah, that's great. Go ahead, Matt.
This isn't a question you're going to be able to answer, and I don't think anyone in here, but how many are loggers registered with the state? It must be. Does that?
Probably like,
Well, do you have to register to be a logger? You have to register to be a,
it's probably licensed, a business license.
I would think. So I'm trying to think of a way, and I know where the commissioner's coming from. We don't want to exempt every 1/2-ton, 3/4-ton pickup truck out there. But if we knew how many, there should be clear language on what is a logging vehicle. I know skidders are obviously, stuff like that, and any motorized thing that's in the woods helping harvest trees, timber. And the logging delivery trucks themselves. But other than that, I can't imagine there's a ton of registered loggers, or if they're registered. We could create some language that said each. I'm gonna throw out a number like 20 registered loggers. Maybe I'm way off, maybe I'm. The owner has a vehicle that allows him to work the woods, it could be a pickup truck, like Sam yesterday works out of that truck. It's an $80,000 logging truck. Our probably a 1 ton or a 3/4 ton pickup, but so limit the number and narrow the definition of trucks somehow. I'd be okay with that, but I could see it getting out of hand. Everybody that works for a logging company, travels back and forth to work, could say, hey, I'm a logger. And they are. Are they exempt? I didn't think so. Whose language was that? Was that
From Michael Grady, and so I just wanted
Go ahead.
thank you, Mr. Chair. I think your point's really well made, Senator Brennan. The way the language is written is we currently have listed, and it's a long list, skidders, feller, bunchers, cut to length processors, forwarders, delimbers, loader slackers, log loaders, whole tree chippers, stationary screen systems, firewood processors, elevators, and screens. And what we're adding is motor trucks, motor vehicles, semi-trailer tractors, truck cranes, truck tractors, and trailers. So if we wanted to just do semi-trailers, truck cranes, truck tractors, and trailers, we would avoid any of that conversation. But I think the point that Mr. Lincoln was making yesterday was that they use the trucks as well to move stuff. So we could just talk about how we maybe refine the definition of motor trucks and motor vehicles, or limit it to a certain number per company. Like that seems
Yeah.
like maybe an easier way to do it. But you already have all of the information for how much it costs DMV to exempt all of those other things. So I think the big number I would like to see you work with JFO on is how much are you already exempting? What is the loss to the state? Do we know that number? And then moving from there, if you can get your head around the semi-trailers, truck cranes, truck tractors, and trailers, it might be harder to get that motor trucks and motor vehicles number, but I don't know.
Yep.
Is that
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
good?
I looked up the tax expenditure report and the logging equipment's not in there. So I don't know why. And so it's a question I was gonna ask JFO, why they don't have that in there. So either it was de minimis, so they include it, but I'm surprised. Usually when they don't have information, they still include it, but then just say no information. So I don't know why that's not in there, because it's been around for a few years. It's in 2018, I think it was, or something like that.
And when it includes repair parts, that might be the other thing that's a little harder to.
So we should ask JFO how they would estimate. Why do they have data for the existing equipment, and then what the estimate would be given that definition?
In another area of concern, it doesn't quite make sense. Is it's lists DMV creating guidance, but also at the end it lists Department of Taxes creating guidance.
Oh, yeah, that's already, it looks like the way the language is, we already have the Department of Taxes does this. So yeah, you're right. That's a Michael Grady question. Mr. Chair, could I request that we have Michael O'Grady come in and Friday? Oh my gosh.
It's fast work.
How'd you figure that out?
So you're next in to talk about budget overview. And since you're the bulk of who's going to testify in it, we're going to take a 10-minute break,
Yeah.
and then we'll come right back and we'll